All right, the little 10-inch product. So I got a bunch of these motors in. This is the concept motor. As part of the deal, the concept buyout. They came with this frame on it. Typically, I used to pull them all off and then build them as order, but I learned it's much more efficient if you just leave them on there and just fix them up the way that you can. The problem is that the guy has, I think, a kicker ramp that's 2 ohm stable, and we're going to do 3 10s, and so I want to see if I can hit about 6 ohms. Well, I happen to have a 2.5 inch 6 ohm coil, which can also substitute for a single 8 ohm coil, and so 3 6 ohm loads in parallel, that's going to be 2 ohms. So what I ended up having to do, because the former height is not so high, because on this one it shows up about there, so there's no room for the cone to grab onto, so I switched to the 4-spoke frame. There's 2 different styles, at least, if not more, of 4-spoke frame. So, especially on the 10-inch. This is the more traditional one. This one in particular was used by Sundown, and I like it because it has an 8-inch spider landing. So it does have the I think 7.5, 7 1/4 lower landing, which is what Sundown uses for the SA. But there's another frame, which is this specific one that I got as a closeout from a dyer years ago. They're still great. I got probably 100 of them left, and so I like to use this one when using a 7-inch spider, and then save this one for when I'm using an 8-inch spider, like, you know, something like this with a 3-inch coil. It needs, you just want to have a little more spider. Again, I'm always trying to maximize performance versus dollar ratio, so you always get a better bang for your buck. So now I had some spiders made up for the 7 1/4 or 7.5 inch landing, but I think they're going to be a little too stiff. Lately, I haven't been liking the results, and so I went with this little floppy butthole. It's very soft. It's not super soft like JL. It's a little bit in between mine versus JL, but I like it because it has dual leads. The only thing you got to watch out for is you got to trim this up. Let me show that. Trim this up to where it's coming out at the top of the roll, and then that way it doesn't short out right here when it gets glued down. So you can just flood the area, but when I can, I try to use one of these spacer rings as a clamp to make sure that that joint is really, really good. Again, you can flood it. I just don't like it. Sometimes you'll see like a little roll imperfection or something like that, and just to alleviate that, I'll do that. So basically what I'm doing is you can see this outer winding. I don't know if you can see that. This is the outer winding, and so I pull this lead down and bring it over here at 180 degrees across from the positive, and so that way the leads line up. So each lead on the coil gets 2 leads on the spider. So I'm basically doubling up the leads, and that's just to prevent the leads from burning up from abuse. You can technically get away with 1, and that's how a lot of manufacturers sort of, it's not a trap, but it's a way to keep the line firm on what's abuse versus what's normal use. So, but I always try to give you the most I can, and that's doing it this way. I can give you a little more abuse room, or headroom, as you want to call it, to get the most out of this coil. This is an all copper coil. Looks like a typical 40 millimeter wind height, and it's very, very good. It's probably Chinese made, not that makes a difference, and it's also probably about 10 to 12 years old. So the frame is too. So I got the frames back in 06? So again, that's what's great about when you guys are flipping these parts, you know, and the motor will be good forever, virtually. As a finalize, what I'm going to do is actually just remove 2 of the terminals and then use that for the next frame. I guess I had used these before for something, and then, you know, I usually have Sherry or one of the boys grind them, and then you flip them face down so that they don't get dusty. The back will get dusty and you just blow it off, but you want this surface area to be clean and just left alone, even though it's got a little bit of oxidization. Is that right? Oxidization? Anyways, I'll do what's called a zip, where I'll just surface grind it with the grinder real quick, both landings, so it's nice and fresh. You get that fresh aluminum, and then that way the CA will bond to it really, really well, and it should last 10 to 12 years. So I think those are the results that I'm looking for. Typically on a heavier coil like this, you want to use a little bit stiffer suspension. However, I know that these are going into a triple sealed box that I have posted on Facebook, and so I wanted to be able to get that first octave pretty well. And so I'm going with a purposely softer suspension because it is going into a sealed box. In a sealed box, typically what you do is you just add a little more power and some bass boost, and you can get basically the same performance you can out of a ported box. So, but because I know that it's going in a sealed box, you can kind of push it a little harder. It doesn't need as stiff a suspension. So you can go with a little bit softer suspension because the roll off from the box anyway is going to come down. So this is where it gets into the art. You basically go through enough of these equations, and you see where you can adjust, and you can, because I'm doing custom, I can start from the very beginning and customize a great product for this guy. And this guy actually bought, this is for his mechanic. So he bought this as a Christmas gift for his mechanic because his mechanic saves him lots of money. And so I think we're doing this package for only $400 out the door. And each subwoofer will have a 3-year warranty and handle a good 5, maybe almost 600 watts RMS. This is bigger than the SDR coil that I showed you the other day as far as diameter goes. So, but it's about the same wine height. It's all copper. So, and then the motor is, this is a double stack actually. Not that makes a difference, but it's got a bit more ferrite. It's a bit thicker. So, but again, it'll be about 500-600 watts, especially for a 10. It gets a little bit higher as a 12 and then as a 15. And I have a ton of these motors, and then there's a couple different versions. One of them has fins on it. Another version has this bumped back plate. Not that it makes a difference. Typically, they just use the same magnet. It's just different cosmetics. This may be actually bumped, where the coil can go down further before bottoming out. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just a cosmetic thing on the outside, not on the inside, that China does. So this is the one that I'm working with right now. So, and then you can see down there, those are the 15s, and then these are the 12s. And then even the 12s have a couple of different frames, a couple of different frame versions. And so you just got to remember that when you're putting stuff together, that it's not always going to be all the same. So, but I'll do a follow-up on this video to show you the final results with the TSPs, and we'll see if, again, it's just like, the reason why it's called archery is because you got to arch and you got to guess a little bit, and aim. And a sin is when you miss the mark. So I don't want to be a sinner. I love you guys. Have a great week.